Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Red Dead Online and we're doing another ability card build. So this one is going to be one that a lot of people have requested, and it's also probably one of the ones that I use most commonly just for PVE, and it's called, or at least I call it, the Texas Ranger build. So basically this one is supposed to be pretty well balanced between mid to long range combat and also up close combat. So this one is just one that I think is great immersion wise, and it works really well in PVE. So when you're just playing the game, if you're fighting revenue agents or lawmen or bounty hunters or whatever you're doing, you know, if you're just fighting NPCs and everything, this one is just a really well balanced one that keeps you alive, helps you deal damage. It's got lots of stuff going for it. So it's definitely a great build. But like always with the ability card videos, what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with an not an outfit, we're going to start off with weapons that I recommend using for this one, and then we're going to do an outfit, and then we'll do the ability cards. So if you want to skip right to the ability cards, you can, but you'd miss all the fun along the way. But with all that in mind, let's just get it started off with the weapons that I recommend using for this build. So starting it off, I definitely recommend dual-wielding Navy revolvers for this one. Now obviously, you could go with anything you want. If you want to use pistons, then I guess Mauser pistols, just because they've got most of the best stats out of the pistols. You could use Schofields, you could use Lamats, but I like the Navy's the best, and that's why I put them on here, especially because they've got that nice high accuracy, high range, high damage, all of that stuff going for them. Plus, I think they look super cool and sound awesome. But for these ones, I like to keep them just stock, because when I picture Texas Ranger, I don't picture some guy with a highly engraved gun that's gold-plated. I picture something pretty basic, so either all blued steel with like the brass trigger guard or whatever to kind of go, and maybe the brass cylinder to try to match the sort of idea of the factory finish, you know, or whatever. Or you do like this and you put on some nice wood grips and just solid nickel plating, no engraving, no carving. I think it looks classic, timeless, awesome design, definitely an awesome gun. So I definitely recommend 2 Navy revolvers to start. Then the next thing I like to recommend, and what I think most people are probably going to find most useful with this build, is going to be a repeater. And you could either do the Evans repeater or the Lancaster repeater. I've just got the Lancaster here because it's the one I use most often. The Evans has a lot of perks over the Lancaster, but I just like the way the Lancaster feels. But the way that I like to design it for this one is, obviously you can see what I've got on here, but the design doesn't super matter. It's more the function of the gun. So you're going to want to make sure the gun can do everything best. Improved sights, improved rifling. I put the short scope on it so you can toggle on and off from that. I know it doesn't look as cool with the scope on, but it is useful for the way that this build works. And then obviously I like the leather wrap. We got this recent one with the quick draw pass that has the bullets on the stock. I think that looks cool. And the leather wrap obviously keeps your gun clean longer and keeps it working better longer. So it's a good choice to go with. I did the classic Yellow Boy design where I've got the gold frame and then the blued steel for everything else, except for the trigger, which is also gold. So I think that looks really nice. Overall, definitely an awesome gun, but for this build, it's important because it's function. Like I said, a good repeater, whichever one's your favorite, with a scope is going to be definitely a rifle you want to have ready for this build. Of course, if you're not a repeater guy, I could understand going for the rifle. Obviously, the advantage being you can put a much bigger scope on it. And if you do go with one, I like to use the Springfield rifle for this build because it just feels right to have that single shot rifle. It's got a nice constant rate of fire, high accuracy, high damage. It's got all sorts of good stuff going for it. I like to design it like this with the darker wood varnish, all nickel plating on basically everything. Nickel or iron. I think I've got iron on the scope. You know, just the darker wood and then the all silver look to it. I think that looks really nice. I put the wrap on it. On this one, I actually used green. Not something I use pretty frequently, but I think it looks pretty good with this gun. But yeah, so if you don't want to go with the repeater, you could go with a rifle, and I like to build the rifle like this. So here's the outfit that I came up with. Obviously, I think I might have accidentally been inspired by the TV show Walker Texas Ranger, because now looking at it, that's almost exactly what it looks like, is Walker Texas Ranger. But I like to have a mustache because mustaches look cool. But then let's just go through the items of this outfit one at a time. So I started off with the Tiltham hat, and I went with the black variant just because it looked the best with this outfit. It's got a nice wide brim, definitely covers you a lot, looks really cool, definitely looks like something a lawman would wear, so that's why I like to put it with the Texas Ranger outfit. For the coats, I went with the classic leather jacket, went with this kind of tannish brown variant. I think it looks really nice. For the shirt, I went with this blue variant of the pattern shirt, and I opened up the collar. Again, I think it looks really cool. For the weapon equipment, I went with the studded bandit gun belt just because it looks really cool, and I went with the matching holster for it. Then for the belt buckle, I wanted a star somewhere on the outfit, you know, to try to simulate the whole sheriff or Texas Ranger kind of feel for it. So I went with the leader belt buckle because it has that star shape. I think any of the posse ones will work, but this is the only posse belt buckle I actually have. For the pants, I went with this light tan or beige variant of the McCrum pants. I think they look really cool. Then for the boots, I was just going to go with the Warren Roper's boots like I do a lot of times, but I wanted it to be slightly fancier, so I went with the Blackburn boots and did this brown variant. I think they look kind of cool. And then just I tried to match some Western Rider spurs with it because they're the right shape to be a classic Texas guy and all that sort of stuff, and they look really nice with the boots. Plus, you got to wear the boots Texas style because you're a Texas Ranger. So that's the full outfit. Like I said, I think it looks pretty cool. It's got a vaguely cowboy slash lawman look to it from, you know, the west or southwest, so I think it looks awesome. awesome, and it feels right with the build. So let's take a look at the ability cards. So for the abilities, this, like I said, again, just keep in mind, this build is designed for PvE. It's a good balance of just free roam stuff, fighting NPCs, all that sort of stuff. It's not necessarily great in PvP. I mean, I've used it in PvP all the time, and it performs perfectly well because it's got some good cards in it. But honestly, this one is perfectly designed for those of you who just like to play the game by yourself. The only people you ever fight are pretty much just NPCs. So we're going to start off with the first perk, which is the Deadeye card, and in that one we're going to have Paint It Black, because Paint It Black is pretty dang useful. It helps make some of those longer range shots or some quick stuff up close. So it says, while Deadeye is active, paint targets on enemies, fire your weapon to shoot all marked targets. Each shot drains a very small amount of Deadeye. You cannot mark or be marked while in the defensive playing style. So it's definitely a useful card, especially if you're in the offensive mode, and I find it pretty useful, especially against like revenue agent roadblocks, because it's great to be able to paint like 4 or 5 of them before you even start shooting the rest of them. So that's very useful. You could use some other ones. You could use SB to keep yourself alive a little bit longer if you're worried about other players attacking you, or just, you know, in general, if you get yourself into really heavy shootouts. Or Slow and Steady is obviously a good choice for the Deadeye card. It really depends on what you're doing. So the Deadeye card is not super important for this build. I just probably use Paint It Black more often than any other ones because, like I said, it's great to be able to clear a sizable group of the NPCs before you go in for the rest of the shooting. That is the Deadeye card. Again, like I said, you could use a lot of different choices, but this one is the one that I chose. So let's move on to the first passive. For the first passive card, we have Sharpshooter. So it says, while using a scope, you deal much more damage and take much less damage. And this is why I said it's important to have, if you're going to use a repeater for this build, to have a scope so you can actually use it like that. So that way, if you're clearing out a roadblock or whatever, you can find yourself some cover for a ways back, pop your, toggle your scope on and start taking out the enemies from a distance. You're going to be able to work very effectively. You can use Paint It Black for this. Now, obviously, you can't paint while you're in a scope, but you can have Deadeye active, and that'll help, it gets rid of the bloom, so you're basically shooting at max accuracy. So that's the reason why I said you could use other ones, because the time that I mostly use Paint It Black when I'm doing this build, or when I mostly use Deadeye, is when I'm looking through my scope, and that's why sometimes I'll do Slow and Steady or something like that, just because it helps you take less damage. But this way, you're very effective at that mid to long range. Like I said, you could use a rifle or a repeater. The reason I don't want to use like a Carcano for this one is because I want to be able to toggle that scope off if I want to do things like while I'm riding a horse going pretty fast, or if I want to use the repeater or the rifle when I'm up nice and close. So that's basically where you're going to be deciding how you're going to do your mid to long range combat. So like I said, Sharpshooter is the first passive card for this build. The second passive card is Gunslinger's Choice, which is one that I use for almost all my builds just because it's such an overpowered card. There's a reason most people consider this to be the best, if not one of the best, ability cards overall. This one just says, while dual wielding with ranged weapons, you deal much more damage and are much more accurate. This one is great for when they get too close to use your scope and you can't deal with them at long range anymore, because you're going to want 2 guns, because if you have 2 guns, it's obviously doubling your firepower, that's doubling your damage per second output. It really makes you a lot more effective. But the problem with dual wielding weapons in this game, unless you're using this card, is they become wildly inaccurate. So if you don't use Gunslinger's Choice, it's much better to only use one handgun, because it doesn't matter if you can fire twice as many shots at the same speed. If you don't hit anyone with those shots, they're not effective. So if you want to use 2 guns, which I definitely recommend for this build because you're going to find yourself in combat up close pretty frequently, I definitely insist that Gunslinger's Choice is the way to go. So that's the second passive card. And for the third passive card, we're actually going to be using a defensive card, and it's called Hunker Down. And it just says you take much less damage while in cover. Now, I think a lot of people overlook this one because, I don't know, maybe people don't use the cover system in this game very efficiently, but for me, this one's huge. When do you take the most damage, or when do you often find yourself looking for cover? When you're taking a lot of damage. So you're obviously under a lot of fire, you've got bullets coming at you from all angles, that's why you're trying to take cover. This card is a no-brainer. It's going to help you take just a lot less damage when you hide behind some crates or behind a wall or something like that when you take cover. So this one, I think, fits really well with this playstyle. Like I said, this is mostly for free roam, mostly just for PvE. So a lot of times the best way to go, let's just take, for example, a Moonshiner roadblock. Let's say you want to take it out from a distance. You're going to find yourself some cover. It's probably a rock or a tree or something, or a wagon. You lean up against it. You get your repeater or your rifle out, pop the scope on, and you start shooting at them. But you're behind cover, so even though they might be able to hit you, you're going to be taking less damage because you're looking down your scope and you've got Sharpshooter, and you're now going to take less damage because you're behind cover and you're using Hunker Down. So it just makes you very, very safe, helps you not take very much damage. And like I said, I think a lot of people sleep on Hunker Down, but it's a super useful card, and it makes perfect logical sense for PvE. So that is the full build. Again, that's Paint It Black, Sharpshooter, Gunslinger's Choice, and Hunker Down. Just in summary, the TLDR is this build makes the player lethal in both close quarters and long range. Sharpshooter and Hunker Down are abilities that make a deadly sniper. With Hunker Down, a player has more damage resistance behind cover, and with Sharpshooter, he deals more damage when scoped in. This turns them into a turtled sniper that peeks out to kill. If enemies manage to flank them, the Gunslinger's Choice ability card is an equalizer. This card increases the accuracy and damage of dual-wielded weapons. The player could dual-wield pistols or revolvers and riddle holes into unsuspecting flankers as soon as they get within range. So, like I said, this ability card build is super well balanced. It works great in PvE. I rock this all the time because it makes you very effective at both close range and long range. My god, someone got here before me. But it's definitely a super well balanced build that I think most people will fit that type of playstyle. But with all that in mind, thanks for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely leave a like rating on the video to show me and YouTube and everyone else involved that it's a super good video, well worth watching, especially if this is the type of playstyle they have. And it's very useful for me in the algorithm. And of course, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, maybe any recommendations for future builds you'd like to see, or maybe just differences in this build, things that you would have done different, maybe a different gun, maybe a slight change to the outfit, or a different card that you prefer. Tell me which Deadeye card you think actually fits with it the best. All of that stuff is welcome down in the comments section. And lastly, I've been attacked. And lastly, if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because if you like this video, you probably are going to like some of the other stuff that I've done, because it's all pretty consistent. But with all that in mind, thanks for watching the video. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a nice day. But in any case, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.